We will be talking in this video about monotonic functions. Okay, the idea of a monotonic function is the following, and we get an initial look at that idea by looking at the graph of a function. So if we've got a function that keeps going up, whose graph keeps going up as we draw it from left to right, that's an increasing function. Increasing function. Okay, now how do we actually write this into math? We write it like so, given 2 points, x1 and x2. So if we've got 2 points, x1 less than x2, okay, we've got this particular point on the graph of f, whose y-coordinate is f of x1, and this other point on the graph of the same function, whose y-coordinate is f of x2. Okay, so again, what we do is when we have an increasing function, as we move from left to right, we go up on the y-axis. So x1 being less than x2 is equivalent to f of x1 being less than f of x2. All right. Now, so this is sort of the math that we write for this intuitive idea of the graph of the function going up as we go from left to right. Okay, but there is actually a much better way of expressing this idea, okay, which is actually very useful in calculus, and we actually say that the function is an increasing function if and only if the ratio f of x2 minus f of x1 over x2 minus x1 is positive. All right, so I mean the equivalence between this way of expressing the idea that the function is increasing and this way of expressing the same idea is kind of obvious, because I mean think about it, this fraction is positive if and only if the numerator of it and the denominator of it have the same sign, right? While this expression here says that x1 is less than x2, or in other words x2 minus x1, which is this denominator, so this denominator is positive if and only if the numerator is positive. All right, so either we say this or we look at this fraction being positive is the same thing. Okay, and the idea of a decreasing function okay, is in some ways the opposite of a function being increasing. So for an increasing function, as we draw it, the graph of it from left to right, we are supposed to go up. But for a decreasing function, as we draw the graph of it, we are supposed to go down. Okay. In other words, in here, if we pick 2 different points, x1 and x2, this point here is going to be on the graph of f. So the y-coordinate of it is f of x1, and this point here is on the graph of f. Its y-coordinate is f of x2. All right, so the definition of a decreasing function is x1 is less than x2 if and only if f of x1 is greater than f of x2. Right, and just like we did with this fraction, this equivalence is actually the same as us saying f of x2 minus f of x1 over x2 minus x1 is negative, right? Because in here, whenever x2 is greater than x1, so whenever this denominator is positive, okay, this expression, which is we can, if you move the f of x1 over to the right hand side, we get exactly this numerator being negative. Okay, so we would rather look at this particular inequality as being the inequality that tells us that this function is a decreasing function.